Hello, welcome back, and in today's video I'm going to be discussing the topic of furries and why I am not intending on becoming a furry in the near future. Now, from a personal perspective, and this is just a personal thing, I am not considering becoming a furry. I did used to enjoy watching certain material that some people might say crosses over into the furry territory. You might remember in the late 1980s there was a film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I used to watch a lot of Disney cartoons as well. I wouldn't say that that makes me a furry. I think most people have watched and enjoyed that kind of entertainment before. But as someone who lives here in the city of Melbourne in Australia, I haven't actually gone to any furry events. I have been to one or two birthday parties where perhaps a woman at the party had a furry companion. This was not her husband. It was a gentleman who had a tiger tail coming out of their pants, but like from the back. And a lot of people, I have to point out, did not like this guy. People thought he was a little bit strange. This was a 30th birthday party, so quite a long time ago. And I remember one of my female friends said that he had bad body odor. I don't know if this is something that a lot of people in the furry community get accused of. I'm just talking about in my own personal experience, as I said. But I want to get a little bit past why I'm personally not a furry and talk a bit more about the ideology of the furry community. Now, in the Catholic Church, there's nothing saying that being a furry is sinful, and indeed there are people who identify as being Catholic who are also furries. And as I've said, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. If you want to dress up like an animal and participate in those activities, it's quite a neutral thing to do. It's like a lot of things we do. You know, is it wrong to go to the gym? Is it wrong to go to a role-playing convention? Is it wrong to go to a baseball match? It's just neutral. So what we want to be looking at here is not so much whether it's wrong to dress up as an animal. We want to be looking more at how that behavior impacts other people and what is actually going on, what is actually involved. So we might go and say straight away that if humans are created in the likeness of God, and I'm not saying that, but if they are, you might question why you're dressing up as an animal and then taking on that identity as if you really believe that it's your own. And even though, adopting a fictional persona is all well and good, you don't want that to become your overall identity and to become completely tied to that identity. So I think if you are someone who is a Roman Catholic and you've decided to go to a furry convention or a party involving a lot of furries, you need to look past the desire to dress up as an animal and to look a little bit more about what activities you may be partaking in if you are at an occasion like this. And most religions are quite consistent with this. There's nothing inherently wrong with dressing up as an animal. However, if you find yourself in a situation with many people who are dressed up as animals, as cats and foxes and so on, are you just hanging out, or are you being pressured in some way to indulge in some activities that might put into question your own personal beliefs and, for instance, chastity? And I guess it's also about whether you are neglecting your own personal responsibilities to other people. And you also want to be asking whether you're putting yourself in a situation where you might become a little bit obsessive. And you also want to be a bit careful about the nature of obsession, because this is something that often happens when people join these sorts of groups. On paper, it is a harmless thing to do to dress up as an animal and to interact in the community, but it just rarely stays that way. And often because you're playing around with your identity, things can become obsessive, things can sometimes become unspiritual, if that makes sense. And I guess this is where my own beliefs and my own ideology may not completely align with a secular humanist view, where people are a little bit more supportive of people who are being furry because of that focus on your own identity and your focus on, I suppose, consent. A lot of people would say that whatever consenting adults want to do in the privacy of their own homes is their business. And while I agree that, consent is very important if you want to dress up as a furry and indulge in certain activities, I would say that you probably shouldn't be indulging in certain activities, even if everyone is consensual. I think that's just a personal belief, and it's a hard one to justify unless you're coming at it from a religious point of view. Now, obviously, someone who is dressed like me and looks like me and holds my beliefs, I'm not going to come across as somebody who would be wanting to become a furry and making that part of my own identity. I don't think that's a shock to anyone. However, there are a lot of people where you might not consider them to be a furry, and they are. And there are a lot of genuine problems with being a furry that I think people overlook and people don't really expect. And one of the major dangers about becoming a furry is actually a pornographic aspect to it. There is a lot of material on the internet, I've heard anyway, where furry content overlaps quite strongly with pornographic content. That's one of those things where, once again, it's a neutral activity to become a furry and to act like a furry, but there is a little bit of an insinuation that it could be connected to pornography, which really is not seen as a good activity for anyone to indulge in. And I think another thing that people don't talk about is the amount of harassment that could take place if you're part of the furry community. This could be sexual harassment or just some other kind of harassment. Some animals think that they can dominate or be predators, and then other animals are preyed upon. And I think once you adopt that into your identity, you can really blur those lines a little bit. So that's a genuine danger that I'm not saying anyone I know has been in that kind of a situation where they've been surrounded by furries. But, it's very important not to confuse reality with fantasy. Once again, I knew somebody who lived with furries. This is quite a long time ago. He himself wasn't a furry, but he was living with 5 furries. And I think he thought it was okay because he didn't have to pay rent when he was living with these furries. And that was all well and good for him. It was sometimes a little bit strange when he would get up for work and in the kitchen there would be a man in a nappy. And I came across him on the street and he was telling me how strange it was that he was living with furries, but they used to go and make him do activities for him. Like he would go and buy ice cream for everyone. He was treated like, I don't want to say the word gimp, but he was treated a bit like a slave. Because there was a strange power dynamic because they were furries and he wasn't. And because he wasn't paying rent, but he had to pay them in other ways. And I think if you're doing that, you're putting yourself in a compromised position. And I think this is why I would never live with furries. Again, not trying to condemn them, but I think I would try to encourage furries to take a bit more of a spiritual view towards life, and also to just be careful what they're doing with their own identity, and to remember that your soul is what's important. And I guess I wouldn't encourage anyone who is participating in furry activities, these dalliances that they're having, they can to some degree cost you your soul. And I hope in this video I have outlined some of the reasons why. But anyway, that's basically it. Let me know in the comments if you're a furry, if you're not a furry, what your perspective has been, whether you think I should become a furry. Obviously, I'm not going to become a furry, but let me know if you think that I should become a furry. And yeah, that's all I've got. But let me know your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you next time.